In Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such forms as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is July 4th, the 4th of July, 2024. We're happy, we're healthy, we're wealthy, we're whole, we're free. Happiness. I would wish you a happy Independence Day. However, I think it is inappropriate because we're not independent. And currently, we're not free. But we're working on it every single day. I always get goosebumps when I read these words or when I hear these words, the preamble to the Declaration of Independence, because you can feel that that's what these people were experiencing back then. It is not black and white. It is not one thing or another, but you can feel the weight of these words. Now, let me welcome you all on Rumble, on X, on YouTube, here in a live chat. I see the real Sussex is here, or no, the real Susie. Sorry, I should be wearing the glasses. Amy's here. Raymond, good to see you. Yeah, there you go. Dee Dee is here. Welcome. Escapegoat, Catherine, Cynthia. Inspired is here. The Wise Thumbs in a live chat. Rob, good to see you. Anne, Sean, Sarah, Joy D, Rita, News for Friends, Goran, kako si prijatelj? Let me see. Julie is here. Voluntary De-occultist, Jason Ness. Hey, Jason. Okay.
Some names are really creative.
Some are really, really creative. Okay, my friend. So I want to kind of unpack this a little bit. First off, I would bet that if you went down any street in any city of America and you stuck a microphone, random people, and asked them, what is the 4th of July about? They might say words like freedom, maybe independence, but I doubt that they know what happened in July of 1776, what happened before, what happened after, what happened during. So I want to break down just a little bit of the main events that led to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. we can agree that it is hard, it is next to impossible for us to know the details of all the circumstances, who were real players, were infiltrators already back then. We can't. We can try, but it is very, very challenging. However, what we can do is show the parallels, and you're going to be quite surprised at the parallels of that time, especially actually after the signing of the Declaration, even after the Constitution was ratified. Um, and what happened soon after in America? You'd be very surprised how it relates to our time today and what moment we're in, because I think this is really the important thing about this. So let's look a little bit about at what happened here with the um, fight for independence. This, by the way, was the Grand Union flag. So when people are um, waving the Star Spangled Banner today to celebrate freedom or celebrate independence, this was the flag when the Continental Congress ratified the Declaration of Independence. So I think this is also kind of interesting to know that it wasn't the Star Spangled Banner. So here's a little bit of the timeline. In May of 1776, and mind you, the Revolutionary War was already happening. It started in 1774. So in 1776, you had various colonies who began to instruct their delegates to the Continental Congress to push for independence. Virginia, in particular, played a critical role. On May 15th, the Virginia Convention passed a resolution instructing its delegates in Philadelphia to propose independence from Great Britain, which fueled momentum towards a formal declaration. So we have to see that this was in the works. This, wasn't just a fluke of the moment kind of thing. Then in early June, they formed a committee. The Continental Congress responded to the growing calls for independence by taking two major steps in early June. On June 7th, Richard Henry Lee of Virginia introduced a resolution. It was later known as the Lee Resolution, declaring the colonies independent. And then on June 11th, Congress appointed a committee to draft a formal declaration. This committee included Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, and Robert R. Livingston. Then they began drafting, right? And Thomas Jefferson was chosen to draft the document largely because of his eloquent writing style and strong reputation as a writer and advocate for independence. And over the next few weeks, Jefferson worked on a draft, drawing on his own draft of the Virginia Constitution, the works of contemporary philosophers like John Locke, and other previous declarations like the Virginia Declaration of Rights. So then late June, they had the debates in Congress, and some still wanted to reconcile, right? They still wanted to reconcile with the king, with Britain. They were trying to figure this whole thing out. And also because of, we here want to stop a little bit and just capture the moment. You have to know that even though it was 1776 and the media apparatus was nothing like we have today, news traveled much slower, although in some cases surprisingly fast, actually, when I looked at the timelines. The loyalist media, the newspapers, were, of course, calling them rebels, traitors, and all kinds of names, stuff that we, of course, hear today, right? And it wasn't a climate where it was a safe thing to do. See, they didn't actually wait until it was a safe period to do it. They did it because they deemed it necessary. Now, there were political reasons. There were, of course, economic reasons. There were, most of these men were men of means. We're going to look into that a little bit. Plantation owners, lawyers, merchants. They weren't poor men, of course, and they had their own interest also in having, not having to be ruled over by the king and being more independent in their economic endeavors. So let's not get naive here. But still, as we find out later, they would pay quite a high price for their rebellion, for their insurrection, really. I mean, if that's what it was at that time, right? So then you had early July, finalization and adoption. Jefferson submitted his draft to the committee, which made some revisions. The final draft was presented to Congress on June 28th, And then over the next several days, further debates and revisions occurred, including the removal of passages that blame King George III for perpetuating the slave trade to appease certain delegates. This was specifically Jefferson, who wanted this to be in the Declaration, who wanted it said that that King George was responsible for importing slavery to the colonies. So it was already then, and not much later, actually, when it came to pass with the amendment, that the push was already to eliminate slavery in that time by certain delegates and by certain signers of the Constitution. Others, plantation owners at that time, didn't want that. This was the beginning. This was always a discussion. I think this is very important to note. And it was a struggle in the creation of the Declaration. It was a struggle later in the creation of the Constitution, and it continued to be a struggle until it was formally abolished. So the vote for independence was actually on July 2nd. The Lee resolution was finally voted upon and approved by 12 of the 13 colonies, with New York abstaining but later joining the agreement. This resolution officially declared the United States independent from Great Britain. Now, this wasn't just one act. This was the declaration. It was signed. So actually, at that time, everybody thought of July 2nd as the date. It wasn't until later, when they all landed on the 4th, where supposedly then it was signed. And then historians have been saying that actually it was signed in August rather than July, which is, but everybody landed on July 4th. Here's the interesting piece. The John Adams, who was one of the founding fathers and a significant figure in the American Revolution, wrote to his wife Abigail Adams on July 3rd, 1776, with great enthusiasm about the events of July 2nd, the day that the Continental Congress voted in favor of independence. In his letter, Adams expressed his feelings about the monumental decision, predicting that July 2nd would be celebrated as a great American holiday. And here's an excerpt from his letter. This is pretty... The second day of July 1776 will be the most memorable epoch in the history of America. I am apt to believe that it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shoes, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward forevermore. So he looked at July 2nd. Of course, later it turned into July 4th. But it's interesting how John Adams on July 3rd, 1776, basically not just predicted, but he probably planned this along with the others as becoming this huge celebratory event that we have today. Nobody celebrates freedom, independence, or what it means. They celebrate burgers, beer, and mindless activities. I kind of find it sad, really, especially in this day and age where we find ourselves at such a pivotal moment. Once again, there's no other way to put it, with the significant difference maybe that not so different, because you had the French Revolution, you had the other revolutions in that epoch. But today we stand at this point almost everywhere in the world, right? So we're going to look into this also a little bit more. So here's what happened then. 24 of the signers were lawyers and jurists, 11 were merchants, 9 were farmers and large plantation owners, and these men were all educated and of substantial means. So what happened to them? And this is where I said it wasn't like they were heroes. They weren't heroes for a long time coming, and then today they're villains again, right? Today, the apparatus, the establishment, brushes them all with a broad stroke as villains, and basically all of that is becoming something bad again. But here's what happened to them. So 56 men signed the Declaration of Independence. 5 signers were captured by the British, labeled as traitors, and tortured before dying. 12 signers had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 signers lost their sons serving in the Revolutionary Army. Another had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 signers died from wounds of hardships related to the Revolutionary War. So I think we are. I think we are missing that some of this is happening to people today, and has been happening to the rebels, the revolutionaries, and they are not all signers of some declaration. Some are revolutionaries or rebels in the medical field. Some are holistic practitioners. Some are in this and have been in this field for a long time, telling people what the truth is about their bodies, about healing, about sickness, and all of that. And many of them have been killed, silenced, what else? Yeah, raided, ruined, and whatnot. And they too are fighters and freedom fighters. You still have people that were at the Capitol on January 6, 2021, incarcerated, solitary confinement, um, still not prosecuted properly, still not had their day in court for an event that has been misconstrued, that it was a huge trap, it was a setup. And we have thousands of hours of video footage that show this clearly. You had people that were escorted by the Capitol security and police, and they were chatting and having fun and whatnot. And they are still rotting in prison. Some have committed suicide since. Some are so depleted that they're taking some bogus plea bargain. You have political prisoners in this nation today, people that are behind bars simply because of what they're doing in informing the public. You have all kinds of rebels that are being silenced, that are being deplatformed, debanked, marked as traitors, insurrectionists, neo-Nazis, and whatnot. We are in a revolutionary moment, whether people want to call it that or not. And this hasn't started yesterday. It's been in the works for years. And I believe that 2020 was a silent moment where many people during the course of 2020 had a silent declaration of independence to and by themselves. Hello, can you still hear me and see me? We should be back in a moment here. There you go. Oh, my apologies. Here we are back again. Many people who had a silent declaration of independence, who were talking to their family members about how they're absolutely declaring their sovereignty and their freedom and their right to do things as they see fit and not follow bogus, crazy, tyrannical rules and mandates. So there are many things that are parallels. I don't think we can imagine, quite frankly, what it was like for these men, what it was like for these families. It was a different time. They didn't have our comforts. They didn't have our luxuries, but they also didn't have our poisoning, our level of poisoning. Since then, the apparatus has centralized everything, has made us incredibly dependent in this independent nation. We're dependent on a system, on a food supply chain, on a water supply chain, on a power supply chain, on an internet supply chain. We're dependent on pretty much everything. And through that, the population was poisoned, dumbed down, and put in a state of paralysis, if you will. And from that state of paralysis, through undying work and unquenchable conviction of quite a few people, people are beginning to awaken again because of the work, because of the information, because of the relentless sharing of what is really happening. And so this happened, in America in 1776 and onward. And if we look a little bit at the aftermath, it was still the Revolutionary Wars would still go on for years and years and years. It would take 11 years from the signing of the Declaration of Independence to the drafting of the United States Constitution. This was a period. We weren't talking about months. This was going on, and of course, the British tried to reverse that. The newspapers all over Britain and the loyalist newspapers were basically saying, "Oh, this is just a fad. These are just some insurrectionists that are going against the king. We'll get them. Don't worry. The redcoats will fight him, and we'll get it back. We'll get it back. We'll put everyone back in line where they belong." And when that didn't work out, or at least we can assume that there were other measures taken later, because sometimes when you can't reach the ideal outcome through war, you have to do other things. So the infiltration began immediately. Here's something interesting. If you look at the period of 1800, so that's just 24 years after the Declaration of Independence. It was 1800. A brutal conflict in Europe was fresh in people's minds, and the race for the White House was dominated by talk of secret societies and corruption in the United States. Conspiracy theories were flourishing across America. Newspapers wrote of European elites seeking to seize control of the young nation. Preachers in New England warned of plots to abolish Christianity in favor of godlessness and depravity. Talk of the Illuminati was everywhere. It was 1800, my friends. The Illuminati, a secret organization founded in Germany in 1776 by Adam Weishaupt, had become very influential. Conspiracy theorists in America said Illuminati manipulation had cost France's reign of terror. The wave of executions and persecutions that followed the French Revolution. They feared something similar in America. The talk of the Illuminati was everywhere. And they feared something similar in America. And the Illuminati agents were working undercover to take over the federal government, outlaw Christianity, and promote sexual promiscuity and devil worship among the young. This is the talk in 1800. It's 2024. Does that sound familiar in any way, shape, or form? Are we talking again about secret societies that have undermined every aspect of society? The infiltration or the fix was probably always in, but there were always good men and women who could see it, who could feel it, who remained somewhat pure or regained some purity, who regained some spiritual connection. It wasn't that in 1776 or through the formation of this nation there was no depravity or infiltration, or that there weren't any high priests in the background trying to pull strings, but always you could find a small minority of people who saw through it and who were willing to stand up to it and fight against it and fight for what they truly believed in. That's always been the case. It is only our cynicism that makes us think everything and everyone was controlled and everyone was a Freemason. And Freemasonry was back then what it is today. All of these things are not black and white. And so we are at this moment where today we're in a revolutionary moment worldwide, and you have a lot of controlled opposition. That is true. You have a lot of people that were installed and pushed so they would lead the rebels in the population, thinking they were actually walking towards freedom when they were just walking towards a different flavor of control. And that's why we have said before that organizing in a big structure is a very delicate thing. So far, every structure, every organization that we were either a part of in some way or have founded even in some way has been infiltrated. And the only thing that you can do when an organization is significantly infiltrated, you can only walk away. You just have to burn that bridge and walk away. And this is why more important than any organization that people can join is the inner work and the inner realization that the words that were used in the preamble of the Declaration of Independence. And think of it, 1776. But still, the words that were used point towards A, a greater power, a greater creator, and B, towards rights and inherent things that you and I possess simply because we are, not because of who we pledge allegiance to, not because of any document. Inalienable, inherent rights through birth. You are a sovereign and free being through birth, even though we find ourselves as free range slaves on this prison planet, in this prison world currently. But we still inherently possess the right to freedom and sovereignty, but we have to choose to exercise it and embody it. That's really important. So how do you join that movement or join that game without signing up for an organization or without becoming part of a party? The first step is that you have to know what embodiment of freedom means. Not just the ability, but the act of saying yes when you mean yes and no when you mean no. For that, you have to lose your fear of the unknown, your fear of death. You can't be free if you're afraid to die. If you're afraid to die, you're not going to be free. You're going to be in bondage by that fear, and that fear is going to command your choices. So you're not going to be able to say yes when you mean yes or no when you mean no, because you will fear the consequences. And the minute that you fear the consequences, you are not free. Freedom is to do what you know to be right, regardless of the consequences. That truly is freedom. To me, that's what freedom means. And we have to do what we know to be right, regardless of the consequences. And if we cannot be pressured, coerced, or blackmailed into an action because of consequences, we are free. So what are we striving towards? What is a better state of affairs than the one that we find today? Well, today we find a system that confirms and blackmails you into submission by saying I have the authority, and if you do not do what I tell you to do, you will have repercussions. You will have fines, you will have imprisonment, you will be negatively impacted. That's not what leadership is. Leadership, first off, is the truth about leadership is that it gets every single right truly from the people. It cannot have a right that the people don't have. And leaders are trusted, not feared. A true leader is trusted because of an experience with that leader, and that leader has proven him or herself to be trustworthy. And so the people are willing to listen to that leader until that leader lets them down, and then they walk away. That's the only proper relationship. It can't be because of fear of repercussions. How is that freedom when you doing the right thing or you doing what you know to be right means that you will be threatened or punished? That's not freedom. And that can only begin individually. But there is another way that you can get involved and everyone can get involved. And how you can step into game is be active in the field that you're passionate in. The way that people were able to be convinced to step away from the only thing they've ever known, and I'm talking mainly now about the British people, but all the other people too. In 1776, all of Europe were monarchies, right? So the only thing that they ever knew was a king, was a monarchy, was serfdom, was that kind of system. The only way they were able to step away from that was a certain level of enlightenment. They had to have bigger dreams. They had to have been shown and told, and it had to be evident to them that a different way of life was possible. Otherwise, they wouldn't have fought for that or accepted that. They would have gone with what they knew, which was the king, which was monarchy. No, they felt something deeper. That was the spark. And that's the spark that is still here. It's still here in this nation. It's still in the people. There's a spark of freedom that's quite unique. And on that spark, we need to build whatever we want to build. But everybody has to step in the game in some way, shape, or form. This is the new kind of revolution. This is not just a few brave men, a few people that nobody knows. No, it's you and me. It's everyone stepping in the game where you feel you can step in the game. If you're really interested in holistic health and healing, nature, herbs, natural remedies, well, become a beautiful, wonderful expert in this field and then tell people about it, show them, teach them. That is practical freedom. If you are really, really interested in AI and how that is threatening humans and freedom and sovereignty and all the technology, then please dive into it and become an expert and teach people about it. If you are really, really interested in political corruption and how that system operates in secret societies, by all means, dive into it and help people see it. We need different voices. We need people that speak in their language, in their voice, in their tone, that use their own words, that can reach other people than we can. There are people that are just repelled by what I look like, what I say, how I say it, and that's totally fine with me because I know someone out there will say similar things, will speak the truth in their way, and they can hear them, and that's fine with me. But please jump in the game. The idea is to not have an all-out war. We have a war on many levels, but an all-out war, a shootout, the use of the mass use of weaponry, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. This is a revolution of the mind and the spirit. It's a human revolution. It's truly the recognizing of who we really are, and to the degree that it was possible to them, these men who uh, drafted the Declaration of Independence, they were showing the degree of seeking freedom and self-expression and self-determination. It's inspiring to think that they were at that level at that time. They were likely influenced, very much influenced by uh, the people that were already here when they arrived here, by the Indians that were here, the American Indians, and they learned a lot from them, especially about the concept of freedom. So this moment is here. There are prophecies, there are projections by trend forecasters, people that look at all the data available. And almost everyone that looks into the future in their own way, that has either significant insight or enough data, tells us that this nation will break apart, that we will have three zones in America. The political landscape, and it was never clearer than it has been since 2020, kind of shows these fault lines to a certain degree, where they could be, how they could be. That, of course, is a goal. To have the breakup of this nation is a goal. It has always been my belief that this nation will not be able to live up to its true calling, which I don't think it ever has so far, only partially, until there is reconciliation with the people who were here before, until there is a unification moment between the American Indians and everybody who came after, until there is a proper recognition, and until we adopt some of the wisdoms and truths that were hidden from us. Because we're lacking them in our culture. We're lacking them greatly, and they're here, they're all around us. I think that is one of the significant key points. And I think this reconciliation would unify the nation in a way that we can't even imagine. But the more people that live truth and truthfully, and have truth as the highest value in their life, the more people will work for a free kind of living, for a free nation. This truly is an experiment. I mean, that so much is true. America really still is an experiment, and they want to end it because too much free thought is in the arena, too much free feeling, too much free creating is in the arena, too much rebellion of concepts, too much deprogramming, too much dematrixing. The rulers don't want that. And that's why we need to step up as leaders and lead this peaceful revolution. Like I always say, I do not believe in offensive violence. If you're being attacked, if violence is being brought upon you, use any and all means necessary to end that violence on you and your family. You know, somebody enters my home, threatens my family, I shoot to kill. Simple. I don't think I'm going to have sleepless nights over it either. I hope it never happens, but if it does, that's what's going to go down. The other 99.9% of my time is invested in this peaceful revolution. Because a nation, a group of people that wants to be sovereign has to be comprised of individual sovereigns. The collective does not create the individual. The individual creates the collective. Many free individuals create a free collective society that lives in a very different way than we do now. So this is, I see this day today, the celebration, more as an affirmation, more as a call to action. This moment has arrived once again. I believe we need to meet it, and it isn't just in America. It's in Germany, it's in Italy, it's in France, it's in Canada. It's probably in Argentina. It's probably in the Asian countries as well. I don't have that much insight there, but I can only imagine that a spiritual awakening is happening everywhere. So, my friends, thank you so much for being with us. Also, we wanted to let you know that if you use coupon code FREEDOM, all caps, in our merch store, you get a discount. And I'm going to play this show out with a song that I wrote not too long ago, released it not too long ago. It's called Time to Be Free. And that is my mantra for this time. So thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. Must be something in the water or something in the air. I can feel it getting stronger. The sounds are all there. It's written in the stars. It's printed in the sand. It's a whisper getting louder, a whisper in the wind. It's time to be free. It's time to be free. From the east to the west, from the south to the north, there's a beautiful awakening. It's time to be free. I can see it in the faces of strangers walking by. Not a word that is spoken, just a spark in their eye. A spark that lights a fire deep down in their soul. Ain't nothing that can stop it once that wave starts to roll. It's time to be free. It's time to be free. From the east to the west, from the south to the north, there's a beautiful awakening. It's time to be free. It's time to be free. From the east to the west, from the south to the north, everybody sing with me. It's time to be free. It's time to be free. From the east to the west, from the south to the north, there's a beautiful awakening. It's time to be free. It's time to be free. From the east to the west, from the south to the north, there's a beautiful awakening. It's time to be free. It's time to be free. It's time to be free.